All right, YouTube, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. It is Thursday, February 6th. We have a 6-game NBA slate to dive into in today's video. Like we always do, I'm going to dive into each and every one of these games. I'll give you my prediction on the side. I'll give you my prediction on the total. We'll talk about any other plays like player props that we like in the game as well. But as always, guys, keep an eye down on the pinned comment of this video. That'll take you to my final plays, so what I'm actually rolling with myself, absolutely free down in the pinned comment. All right, YouTube, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. I tell you guys I'm a dummy all the time. They don't suck. They've just been sucking. Get them down to -3 for more juice than Jose Canseco in his prime. Tell me you're new without telling me you're new. So don't go jumping down my throat in the comments, right? If you want to fade me, or if you do want to ride me, this still leaves a bad taste in my mouth, right? And remember, more chins, more wins. All right, in terms of how we did yesterday, DeMar DeRozan ripped us. He rug pulled us from a very, very good night. It's a 3-2 night there. One of them a smaller unit, quarter unit play there, but still, DeMar DeRozan is the story here. That Pelicans team total under honestly wasn't the worst move. They got off to a hot start. They looked good, for the first half. The Nuggets eventually brought them back down to earth, but ultimately they ended at 119. We had under 116.5. DeMar DeRozan, I think, entered the fourth quarter with like 18 and 1. So we weren't getting the assists from him anyways, but we needed 23.5 in terms of points plus assists. We finished with 19 and 2. So yeah, he went from, a 3-2 night to what could have been, and obviously you can't say what could have been in this industry, but what could have been a damn 4-1 night. Unfortunate there. And speaking of unfortunate events, the ride of the day. Got to drop the womp womp on my man Kool-Aid, who was coming off of an absolute banger of a play, right? But now drops Jalen Duren double-double. Jalen Duren, 22 minutes played, 10 rebounds. Let's go, right? We're right there. 8 points. Comes up just shy of the double-double. If you guys don't know what the ride of the day is, just use that hashtag ride of the day or ROTD in the comments. I pick one person's play each and every day. Give you a shout out in the next video, win or loss. Also shout you out over on my Twitter/X, which is popping up right here, right now. If you guys do want to follow me there. We also shout you out over on the Guy Boston Sports site. If you win, we continue to ride with your plays until you do lose. If you lose, you get the womp womp. We got to talk about it like my man Kool-Aid had to face today. But still a good look. He did the hard part, in my opinion, getting those 10 boards, but only 8 points from Jalen Duren. Let's go ahead and dive into this slate. We're starting off with what could be a decent game here, right? Hit that like button. Hit that subscribe button. We're looking at Boston taking on Dallas. Now, the injury report's going to be massive here. You could have Anthony Davis playing for Dallas. That's the biggest thing there, because they're still without Lively. They got rid of Kleber, right? So no Powell. Daniel Gafford's going to get the center, but they're lacking on the big front. PJ Washington also out. So this game, and a lot of my plays that I'm going to talk about here, depend on whether or not Anthony Davis plays. Jrue Holiday is listed as questionable on the Celtics side of things. That's not the biggest of deals to me. I feel like he's the starter that they pick up the slack when he's out either way. But maybe there's some Peyton Pritchard value if Jrue Holiday is ruled out. But ultimately, this is how I'd look at it. If Anthony Davis is a no-go, I don't mind the Celtics -10. We just saw them rout the Magic, was it 122 to 107, something like that, at the end of January, so pretty recently. Now you're at home. Boston coming off a good win against Cleveland. Sure, I could see them playing well, right? If Anthony Davis doesn't play, I don't know if it fully gets me to look at the Mavs plus the 10, but it kind of turns me off of that Celtics -10. You know what I mean? Total-wise, I think this is an under-type game as well. I think the Celtics defense looked really good against the Cavs. They've been a good defense down low recently, which was their issue at the very beginning of the year, and they should be returning to form as a good perimeter defense. We saw that against the Cavs. So, yeah, I like the under 231, especially if the Celtics had Mavs number last time out, right? Like, that was I think it finished at 239, and that was because, well, actually, I think it finished at 229 in a sense, right? So, under this number, and the Celtics put up 122. I could have those numbers wrong, but similar to those, right? In terms of where we go player prop-wise, this is totally dependent on Anthony Davis. I really like Kyrie Irving for plus money over 5.5 assists if Anthony Davis plays. If Anthony Davis doesn't play, I don't mind Kyrie Irving, his points, and maybe his points plus assists. The Celtics struggle in two areas defensively, on the pick and roll and in the isolation. You're going to be hard-pressed to find a better player than Kyrie that fits both of those molds perfectly, right? And Kyrie is that guy. So if Anthony Davis plays, I do like his points plus assists, but I like that plus money for the assists. If he doesn't play, then I guess I'd still consider Kyrie in points, but the Celtics are going to hone in and be like, we know you're going to try and score, right? Especially with all the history they have. So I think Anthony Davis is a huge determining factor on if we have anything going, any action on this game or not. All right, next up, we're looking at Minnesota taking on Houston. Minnesota is on a back-to-back. They're coming off of a quality win against Chicago. Anthony Edwards went off 49 points. He had 17 or 18 foul shots, 17 of them he sunk. Houston, not exactly in the best spot right now. They're dealing with injuries, but they've lost 4 straight games. 2 of those losses against Brooklyn, one of them at home. So I do think you do have Minnesota here, probably in seeming like they're playing better basketball. Overall, this Houston team, their defense took a shot when, Jabari Smith went down. Now Tari Easton's down. Like this Houston team this season has been a very, very good defense. No one's really saying otherwise, but actually at the rim in the last 10 games here, they're allowing nearly a 72% field goal percentage made. So I do think that there could be some opportunities for a player prop here, maybe like a Rudy Gobert look points-wise, depending on what his line is. Let's see if we can find that really quickly. I don't mind his double-double. It's at plus 125. Over 11.5 for plus money. I don't necessarily mind that. On back-to-backs, let's see how he's done on back-to-backs so far this season. The last 2 back-to-backs he's played 16 and 17 points. One of those against Cleveland, a decent, defense. So yeah, maybe that's a look. Also, Jalen Green is a look too. The way that you can beat this Minnesota team is targeting the pick and roll, which Jalen Green is going to be that guy. But in terms of where we come out on a side here, I do think that this is going to be a spot for. I would say the only reason I'd lean Houston is because of the back-to-back for Minnesota. So it's not necessarily this biggest of reasons, but I think that pick and roll should be pretty successful for Houston. Yes, Minnesota may be able to, up their play in the paint. That's how to get Houston right now. But even still, it's like Minnesota's not always electing to score in the paint. They've been living on the perimeter. So I'll lean towards Houston, but this is a tough one. I definitely went back and forth here today. But player prop-wise, I don't mind Green or Gobert, the 2 Gs there. When we're looking at this from a total perspective, right now it's sitting at 214. It makes sense, right? You have 2 top 10 defensive efficiency teams so far this season. I could see this one getting right around that 213 mark, and there are some studs on each team. Jalen Green, I even like Gobert to score today, Anthony Edwards. So I think that there's enough talent and enough defensive weakness in the spots that we need them to go up and over that number, even with good defenses. So I'm going to lean slightly towards the over as well. And guys, real quick, one of the tools that I'm using every single day, I show you guys plenty, right, is Outlier. We have a link down in the description as well as the pinned comment. You get 7 days free. This is my favorite research tool out there. It's not just for the NBA either. I know there's tons of NBA-specific tools and whatnot that are great, but the great thing about Outlier, you can use it for NFL. Baseball's coming up. NHL's in full swing. They have all the sports, all the main sports on there. So go ahead and check it out. My favorite research tool, especially for player props. So you can use it for games and spreads and totals and everything like that. So that link is going to be down below in the description as well as the pinned comment. You get 7 days free with that link. Go ahead and try out Outlier. After that, it's $19.99 a month afterwards. It's like still a very price manageable tool even after the trial. So go ahead and check it out. Again, that link is down below. Now let's jump back into these games. We've got 4 more to talk about. All right, Denver taking on Orlando. 2 teams on a back-to-back here. We just kind of briefly mentioned how, at least when we recapped, that the Pelicans played Denver and ended up, scoring 119 on them. But again, Denver played better as the game went on, and they ended up winning that one 144 to 119. Magic were the team that just threw a wrench into our Sacramento DeMar DeRozan play plans. They ended up playing him fairly well, and I do think that there's some promise with that Sacramento team. I'll say that. Overall, in this spot, you have Denver 8.5-point favorites. That seems like a very, very high number. Jalen Suggs potentially playing here. We'll find that out later. They're on a back-to-back, so they don't have to declare their injuries yet, I guess. So we'll see how that one sort of turns out, I guess, overall. But to me, Denver back-to-back so far this year hasn't necessarily been the go-to spot because of the numbers that they've had. But in reality, like, surprisingly so, they've covered in 70% of their back-to-back. So I sit there and I'm like, yeah, I hate the idea of a back-to-back in this number. Like, usually we're not considering it, but they've been doing it. They've been hammering it. 70% of their back-to-backs they've covered in. So, yeah, I'll take the home team. You do have Orlando, who is at least on the West Coast. They played Sacramento. Now they travel to Denver. But Denver's just sitting there at home, right, waiting for them. So, yeah, I'll lean towards Denver. I don't know if I fully get there myself just due to the fact that they are on that back-to-back, and 8.5 is a pretty damn big number. And somehow Orlando is kind of a perplexing team right now. Like, they're having some high-scoring games. But overall, a few of the reasons why I don't mind the look here is I do think Denver's one of those teams that can totally combat Orlando's interior defense, right? Like, being able to score down low is crucial against this Orlando team, and Denver's the best team in the league right now at doing that. One thing I will say, and I didn't mention this for the other 2 games, and I probably should, it's the trade deadline, guys. Like, that is going to be a thing where just don't go crazy on a slate like today, because what if, you never know, right? Like Luka, exactly. What if you were liking the Mavs and he was healthy or something like one day? Like, you just never really know in this league. It's been pretty crazy. We've had some amazing trades. We're reacting to most of them over on the second channel, More Guy Boston Sports. But just be conservative today, see how the dust settles, okay? I'm not saying anyone in this game necessarily type of thing, but you never really know. So give me Denver. In terms of a total, I do think that they kind of return back down to form. I'm going to lean towards the under in this spot, 221.5. You have two teams that in their blood, they're not fast-paced. I know I mentioned Orlando's having some up-tempo games, and Denver's actually been playing fast this year, but I don't think that they need to, especially in this spot. I think that they'll succumb to Orlando slowing them down. So give me the under 221. Where I'd go player prop-wise, honestly, probably considering some unders, if I'm being completely honest. Both these teams really good at stopping the pick-and-roll ball handler, so I wouldn't be opposed to a Jamal Murray under in points. This season in back-to-backs, he's hit the over in 4 of his 7, sure, right? But overall, again, against good teams against the pick and roll, he doesn't necessarily fare all that well. On the other side of things, you do have Franz as well as Paolo, who are both going to be pick and roll ball handlers. I'd probably take the under in Franz. He's been going good game, bad game, good game, bad game since coming back. When I say bad, it's like 24 points. His line's 25.5 right now, so I do think Denver should be able to, kind of slow him down. Last time he played Denver was last season. He had 27, but that was obviously him healthy. So I don't mind some unders there, but again, like, think about the names we mentioned. Murray, Banchero, Franz, like, it could be kind of psycho to take unders for these guys. All right, Kings taking on Portland. Kings having that tough loss last night, obviously, with Zach LaVine making his debut, and then us loving DeRozan and him not coming through. But this Portland team is a steamroller right now. 9-1 in their last 10, 10-0 against the number. They're playing some ball. I don't think that it's debatable. They are playing some ball, and the way these two teams match up, we'll jump into the dashboard. I'll show you how to get access to this dashboard in just a second. It's on the Guy Boston Sports site. But a couple things to note. So Portland allows tons of shots to go in from the mid-range, 53.8% field goal percentage, right? It's actually where Sacramento is thriving right now in the mid-range. So that's a little worrisome. Also, small forwards, a lot of assists. So we may be running it right back to a DeMar DeRozan over points plus assists. I could be crazy. I don't know. We'll sound the psycho alert alarm. He rug pulled us, and now I'm looking at him again. That's a player prop spot that I'd like. But one thing I will say is this Portland team obviously loves to score in the paint. Sacramento, though their last 3 games wouldn't necessarily dictate it, they are a good paint defense, and I think that that's going to be kind of the spot in which they ultimately end up winning this one. Now, they aren't a back-to-back. I've mentioned that, right? Like, that's not exactly the most prime spot for them. Clearly, we can even see using that dashboard that right here, you can see no rest situation for Sacramento, just 33.3% of games. Portland, when they have a rest advantage over teams, 61.5% of games they've covered in. So sure, I understand that. The one thing I will say is, look, Portland in no rest situations, 68% of their games go over. Sacramento, 67% on back-to-backs go over. Sacramento is the higher paced team here. I think that they could run on this Portland team that's very much, during this win streak, tried to slow teams down and whatnot, right? Like, their games are 112 to 89, 120 to 119. That's high scoring. 108 allowed to Phoenix, 90 allowed to Orlando, 112 allowed to Milwaukee, 118 allowed to Orlando. That was their only loss in their last 10, and they still covered in that one. So if Sacramento can run and obviously get out and run against them, I don't mind this spot for Sacramento. Also, last time they played, Portland won, so maybe Sacramento has a little bit of bad blood there. We should look at the injury report, obviously, because we do have, trades for Sacramento as well as them being on a back-to-back. Looks like their starters are good to go. Jonas Valanciunas, who they just acquired, still listed as out, so I don't imagine he's playing. And then Portland starting to get a little bit healthy. So, yeah, I'm going to go Sacramento. In terms of a total, I don't know if that's where I'm, like, hooting and hollering about points. I think it's more of a pace spot. So I'm still going to lean towards the under, but I think the reason I may actually roll with Sacramento as an underdog is because they can up the tempo just that much. And again, psycho or not, I do think that there's an argument to be made for DeMar DeRozan here. His points plus assist line at 23.5 yet again. Last time he played Portland, which he didn't play in their most recent one, but the time before that, he did have 26 points plus assists. He had 3 assists, 23 points. So maybe we just look at his points. Right now you can get it at 19.5. Maybe that's the smart move because he came closer to that last night. He only had a couple assists. So maybe we look in that direction, but I do think he fits the bill pretty damn well. I do. All right, Lakers taking on Golden State. So I'm sure everyone's wondering, if we're going to get Luka and We could. He's listed as a game time decision. Now, I think we've seen that he's expected to make his debut Saturday or something, or I think they've already thrown out a date, right? But he's actually listed as a game time decision here. So even though that's been said and announced, who knows? Maybe he does play. I don't think he will, but I'm just kind of throwing out there that he's listed as, in the official injury report, GTD, game time decision. But I think that they're going to hold him till Saturday, but that would be kind of cool. Playing against Golden State, first home game, that type of thing. Golden State, Jimmy Butler gets traded. He's listed as doubtful here. This is a Lakers team that has been playing good basketball when at home this season, and they are at home now. Now, Golden State, I don't think is the best road team. I mean, even if we look at it from the numbers perspective, on the year they've covered in 52% of the games, great. But they're looking at on the road. But they're looking at a Lakers team that has covered in nearly 60% of their home games. This is a big number. I can understand that, but catch and shoot, the Lakers have been very good defensively against from the perimeter, and they also, cover the perimeter well in general. That's sort of their defensive strength. Interior is where you're going to see some issues, but this is a Warriors team that was, at the beginning of the year, scoring a lot in the paint, and that was when they had Andrew Wiggins, who's now not going to be there. He's going to be in Miami, as well as Jonathan Kuminga. Neither one of those guys here in this spot, so I look at this one, and I almost want to think about like a Warriors team total under, because I do think the predominant way they're going to try and score is those threes, and I like the idea of the Lakers out there in the perimeter. Now, the Lakers also just got Mark Williams. I don't think that he's playing for the Lakers, but that's another piece that they just added. A lot of trades going on so far in this deadline. But yeah, you can get the Warriors right now under 109.5. Is it a little risky? Sure, but I almost want to trust this Lakers team here, against them. But again, it's the Warriors, and Steph can kind of shoot out of any defense. But I'm going to lean towards the Lakers as well as the under, and then a potential team total under. It's just a matter if I have the cojones to pull the trigger on a Warriors spot here, right? When sure, the Lakers, I mentioned all their defense on the exterior and out on the perimeter and whatnot. They're still not a very good defense, so take what I'm saying with a grain of salt. In terms of what we'd look at, in player prop wise, I think a couple things to note here. If we want to look at the Lakers, you're going to target a couple things. You're probably targeting someone to shoot from the perimeter because this Warriors defense inside actually is fairly good. But realistically, you want to target still, even though it's not the way that they've been scoring or anything like that, you're going to want to target guys that do like to score inside for this Warriors team. Trace Jackson Davis, if he gets the minutes, could be a fair look, but I think he's even questionable. You have Quentin Post, who's going to shoot down there. I don't know if we really love that. A lot of weird spots. I would say Andrew Wiggins, but you're going to want to target some guys down low. I think that Post's line is probably going to be super, super low, right? Let's see if we can find, if we even have it. Quentin Post, let's see. His points line, his first half points are 5, so I imagine around 9.5. Maybe that is a little bit too much. All right, I don't know if player props aren't really doing it for me in this game, to be honest. All right, we got the Clips taking on the Pacers. This should be a good one. I know it is in LA, and that is where the Clippers have been dominant this year, 17-9 this year when at home. They haven't really been covering, though, but they've had some big numbers. But the Pacers, not all that great on the road, 28.6% cover rate. Clippers just 40% at home. So, I mean, sure, I would call that somewhat even. The way that I'm thinking about rolling with this one would be to back the Clippers just because they are at home. Can you make an argument for the Pacers? Sure, but I do think that these teams do things a little similar. Like, Indiana's going to want to score in the paint as well. That's where the Clippers like to do their damage. And when you really look at it, this is an Indiana team that just doesn't really stop much in the paint. So that's the biggest thing that I would identify overall, right? But from everything else, when you take a peek at it, it's well, Indiana doesn't cover the pick and roll all that terribly. They cover isolation fairly well, and with James Harden and Kawhi, they run a ton of isolation on the Clipper side of things. So there is an argument to be made for the Pacers, but if this was flipped and Indiana was at home, I'd probably like Indiana. I think that the home court is going to be a massive advantage here for the Clippers overall. And like I said, they haven't necessarily been covering. Actually, I think I was looking at, I do believe they have, I might have the wrong thing in my notes. I think that this Clippers team actually is very good at covering at home overall. I think that I might have a couple different things noted there. So I would definitely say take that with a grain of salt, those cover rates. I think that I was looking at something else, but it's kind of spacing me out right now. Can't really think of it. But overall, yeah, Clippers minus the points. I think that they're going to have the interior edge, which should set the tone here against the Indiana Pacers, who really are not shooting a lot of threes as of late, right? They are targeting that mid-range as well as inside. So That's how I would look. If you really want to talk about player props in this one, actually we can talk about the total. I think that this one also is a candidate to go under because we should be counting by twos on both sides. So I like the under 228 here. But if we want to talk about player props, I do think that Zubac could be a look. Now, his line right now, let's see if we can find an updated line. It's been right around that 14.5 line, which is kind of... at the beginning of the year, remember how often we were cashing it, but he's been up and down to it here. Against the Pacers, though, he's averaging 13.5. I mean, last time he played this last year, he only had 9 points, but that was on 8 attempts. He shot 50% from the field. He should be shooting a little bit more. He's averaging 11 attempts per game this season. But like I said, I like the matchup because they scored down low fairly easily. And Miles Turner is going to be a guy that he sure was a block party every single day, back earlier in his career, and a better rim protector. He's more of like an outside guy now type of a thing. Another spot I would consider is the guy that's been having a really, really good year, Norm Powell. Now, he's going to be able to light it up from outside, which is where the Pacers are good defensively, but he's also someone that will get into the paint and get into the restricted area. And he had 22 points last time they played, and that was only on 13 field goal attempts. This season, he's shooting the ball nearly 17 times per game. So Norm Powell, his line's pretty high, but could be a look there as well. But guys, like I said, trade deadline today. Don't do anything stupid. Seriously, anything can happen in a game in a day like today, right? Like someone could get traded that you wouldn't even know is on the trade block. So be patient, be careful. Comment 22. I think we're just near the 22-minute mark here. Comment 22 if you made it this far into the video. And we'll catch you guys in the next one, right? Peace out.